What I don't like is when it becomes so telltale anti-Christ, when it's about personal people, when it's about personal souls, when it's about them being infected or infested, when people themselves and their names become, synonymous with demonic activity. This is a big problem. To me, that's just evil. It's tricky, right? Do you have rules? Do you know priests and bishops that have rules? Like, what are people saying in your world? You talk to a lot of good Orthodox folks. What is there an appropriate way?
Well, I guess my gut feeling is that anything that causes division in the church needs to be avoided.
I think this is where we were in our advanced podcast conversation. I like the idea that liturgy, the first prayer, the opening of the doors, and then to the end of the homily, however it's done, that there's something formal there that demands a different kind of conversation. But after that, if I'm sitting in the hall, or I'm getting food at, I'm forgetting the name I always use, after church, it feels like everything should be open. It feels like at that point, the medicine we got at liturgy now is being supplemented with some aspirin that we're going to have, at the dinner after liturgy. In other words, a little bit of that afterwards is good for us, where we can open up to one another. The problem is when people start to identify human beings with the wrong position, and then they start to identify the wrong position as demon-filled, and then now they've got a demon in their parish. This is a big problem.
Well, these things should be, again, they should be addressed locally. And what we have essentially, and this is, I think always been the case, at least it certainly was the case in Greece, 100, 200 years ago, 150 years ago, with these para-ecclesial organizations, the brotherhoods, in Greece. And what were they? Like, they were made up of Orthodox Christians, but the people that were leading them didn't have any responsibility. They could say and do whatever they wanted. And it created, those who were on the inside and those who were on the outside. And so now you have a division in the church, and it goes beyond the parish. And so now the priest has to deal with factions within his own parish. And then you've got people, leaving and going other places, and things just fall apart. Like there should be one pastor, one flock, and so, like I said, with Father Themi, in your example, he was happy to talk about his position, but it was in a private setting with his flock.
Yeah.
So again, anything that causes division, I think it is problematic.
Okay. Go back to history with me for a second. We both like history. So after the persecutions under Diocletian and really right up through to Constantine, you had all these moments where the persecution would get really strong. People would have to make difficult decisions. And then after the persecutions went down, because it wasn't 300 years of straight persecution, it was up and down. Then people had to sort of get back together, and then they're facing each other. There's the Donatists and other folks, and guys come back with scars because they wouldn't give up the sacred items, and then they have no tongue. And then one guy ran, and now they're both in liturgy together. The guy with no tongue and the guy who head for the hills and probably even burned some incense for Caesar. And they're staring at each other. Well, the Donatists said, yeah, we're not going to worship with you. Now, I think they were right in the sense that they did have the moral high ground. They stood there and took the punches. They were martyric, but they were wrong because they wove divisions. They created divisions and eventually created the division, which they were heretics. So it's not that the division is bad for me. It's the decision to not bow low and offer forgiveness. In other words, there has to be a division in order for us to see clearly, what unites us. The division doesn't scare me as much. The it's God and man. It's yin and yang. You need both.
I mean, it seems from Christ's words that, everything that he desired for the church and all of his life was about bringing unity, and he prayed against disunity. So
no doubt. But there's going to be some suffering. There's a cross. So I think for me, it's both. And and this really ties into our work. I welcome. So I'll give you an example. This is tricky. Also, it's happening right now. So First Things Foundation, where we work, we use it like an Orthodox ethos, a way of being, a way of seeing the world as our fundamental principles in order to go and do aid work, small project development. I don't know if people out in your audience know, it's basically, it's the work that resulted after the World War II and the Marshall Plan. So to come back to my idea, the Marshall Plan created this whole notion, hey, we can aid other countries. And that was America to Europe. But that whole idea just expanded into America to Africa, America to Asia. So aid, delivering aid. So we kind of do that. We do it with a certain principle, with this ascetic principle that you're going to have to sacrifice something like your time, 2 years, and like some stuff like comfortable living, yada, yada. We do this fully knowing that we're doing it as Orthodox, but we recruit non-Orthodox. You see what I'm getting at? So right now we're about 50-50 of the 15 or so people that'll be in the field in February by March. Right now it's 50-50 split. So you have people within the First Things Foundation Church, you like it, within our organization, within the living and breathing body that we call First Things, that are not Orthodox. And they'll say things that aren't in alignment. Does this make any sense? And then within the organization, the idea is that we have to hew out the things that are in alignment in like a Venn diagram way. And we keep trying to find that middle place, but it's only through expressing the division. It's only through expressing the minority viewpoint that you can get to a type of unity.
Right. But I don't think
it's not the same, right?
It's not the same, right? The fathers didn't want to have ecumenical councils,
but yet we did.
We did because there were heretics.
That's what I'm saying.
Saying things in the church that weren't true, so they had to be dealt with. But we don't come to theological truth through thesis, antithesis and synthesis, and
through revelation,
and debate.
Through revelation, right?
Through revelation, yeah, and through saying things, in a negative way about God, and it's very different. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, St. Paisius talked about, after liturgy, if going to coffee hour is a temptation, or maybe even, I think he even said, just like, don't go, like, don't hang out with people after church, like just go home and keep the grace that you've received.
That makes sense to me. We don't want someone's weak spirituality to be a reason for them to no longer come to the liturgy. Right. It's just unadulteratedly spiritual, whatever that sounds like.
I think so. Yeah, there's a danger outside the church walls for divisions to be created in groups to come together. And obviously, the internet has made this increasingly easy. And so
that's a good point. It feels to me like part of the invite right now is to the struggle. I know that doesn't satisfy you, perhaps. Part of it is part of the invite of this disintegration in culture is to have to deal with it, to struggle. And sometimes it sounds like a fight. And I don't know if that's good or bad. It just feels like it's part of the invite. It's just part of our cultural moment. And I don't mind some of it. What I don't like is when it becomes so telltale anti-Christ, when it's about personal people, when it's about personal souls, when it's about them being infected or infested, when people themselves and their names become, synonymous with demonic activity. This is a big problem. To me, that's just evil. So maybe that's a type of line. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's very sad to see. I've seen a lot of people, calling each other heretics and stuff, which is just ridiculous and very, very disconcerting.
Agreed.
Because
Agreed.
The only one that's winning is the evil one.
Did years burn out those words? Did a voice whisper absurd? Did your mind comprehend and ask if you'd last till the end? Traded money and lands, family dreams and plans, for a desert exile and a life of trial.